welcome you here in presence and everybody in Zoom. And my name is Malte Brinkmann. I'm the Executive Director of the IZBF. And before we begin our members' meeting and the panel discussion on the future of educational research this afternoon, we will start with a talk by Tomasello, whom I would like to welcome in particular. First, very briefly introductional remarks on his person. Michael Tomasello's research, which has received many international awards and honors, addresses issues of cultural evolution, shared intentionality and attention, gestural communication from developmental, comparative and cultural perspectives. They are based on the extensive empirical studies of human and non-human primate communication and cooperation, child language acquisition and deaf communication. He is well known to us all from his many books which are published in German in translation by Surkamp. Michael is professor at the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at the Duke University in Durham in the States. He is Director Emeritus at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig and in Leipzig University Honorary Professor. A warm welcome to you, Mike. We are very excited about your lecture, Cooperation and Cultural Learning. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Malte. In my 18 years or so in Leipzig, I had many occasions to come to the HU for various things, and both as a presenter and as a participant in workshops and whatnot. And so I miss Germany very much, I have to tell you. The United States has some nice features, but yeah. My friends and I who've lived in Germany all just say, well, Germany's a better country, but that's another story, I guess. Any case, I'm very happy to be back, if only virtually. So let me share my screen with you. Yes. And as you may know, if you are familiar with the research that I've been doing for the last 30 years or so, I don't really study education directly. But I have worked on things in young children, mainly toddlers and preschoolers, that is before age 5 or 6 or so. And there are a lot of those things that are definitely relevant to education more narrowly defined, formal education. And they are directly relevant to what we might call informal education. So I just want to share some of that research with you today. And actually, at the end, I want to tell you a little bit about a theoretical paper that a colleague of mine and I wrote that is sort of directly relevant to the notion of the evolution of pedagogy and cultural learning. All right, just to set the evolutionary background, the puzzle of humans is that we are very closely related. We are a species of great ape. And we are very closely related to the other great apes. We separated from them only about 5 or 6 million years ago. In evolutionary terms, we are as close to the other apes as lions are to tigers, as horses are to zebras, and rats are to mice. So those species are all distinct, but cognitively speaking, they all live in somewhat similar ways, whereas humans live in a completely different way than do the other apes. We live with complex technologies. We live with complex symbol systems like languages and Arabic numerals. And we live with complex institutions like universities and governments. So where did all these things come from? When you look at experiments comparing humans and great apes, you can find differences. I've spent my career looking for differences and establishing some, but they're all relatively small. And so I have taken the kind of formula, a small difference that made a big difference. And the small difference I described many years ago as leading to the possibility of the Ratchet effect. So let's assume these shadowy figures here are hunter-gatherers. I couldn't find any clip art of hunter-gatherers, and they're all using stones as hammers. And then one genius figures out that if you halved the stone to a stick, it gives it more power. So one genius, say, made this discovery. And then because humans are such great social learners, everybody got the new thing right away. Everybody got the new invention right away. And then skipping several tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, some individual invents some new thing and everybody gets that. And then somebody invents that. So I've sort of characterized this as humans pool their cognitive resources because any individual can innovate and then everybody gets it. And that's not true of the other apes. Jane Goodall once made an observation. She said, we miss a lot of intelligent things that apes do because they do them once off and we never get to see them. That doesn't happen in humans. Some genius invents something and everybody learns it immediately. So it spreads in the group. So I call this the Ratchet effect. And the sort of counterpoint to that is imagine a child who grew up on a desert island with no social interaction and no culture. What would they invent on their own? And the answer is not much. So they would be very similar to great apes. As adults, maybe they'll be a little bit different, but they wouldn't have cultural institutions and they wouldn't have Arabic numerals and they wouldn't have complex technologies on their own. So what the huge difference in humans is that we have pooled our cognitive resources. We put our heads together. We've accumulated these things. And this is all based on basically a cooperative attitude and skills for cooperating, skills for putting our heads together, either at the moment to collaborate or like the Ratchet effect over time by exploiting what others have done in the past. And more recently, I have sort of proposed an evolutionary scenario where we start with ape-like creatures who are mainly competing with one another, and we can talk about them as having individual intentionality. And then before you get to culture, there's an intermediate step of collaboration. And there we don't have culture yet. We don't have conventions, we don't have norms, we don't have institutions, we don't have a conventional language. What we have is collaborating and communicating with gestures like pointing and iconic gestures or signs. And only then do we get to culture. Right? And culture then scales up this collaboration to the whole group. So actually one way I characterize the evolution of my thinking over the last 30 years or so is that I used to think that what made humans different from apes is culture. And that's still true, but I think there's a deeper answer than that. And I think it's cooperation or collaboration, because I think of culture as a special form, a group level form of cooperation, not just between individuals. So this is important because in ontogeny, we're going to see a period in early ontogeny, really from like even 1-year-olds, who are already collaborating and communicating with one another in ways that great apes don't. And they are not yet active participants in their culture. Yes, they live in a culture, but they're not active participants in the collectivity of culture at 1-year-old. So in ontogeny, joint intentionality or collaborating with others, joint attention, cooperative communication, like with pointing, is 9 months. And then collective intentionality, where they really understand cultural conventions and social norms and so forth, is really going to be about 3 years of age. So that's in my 2019 book called Becoming Human, I provide a lot of evidence for big transitions in human cognitive ontogeny at around 9 months, and then again at around 3 months. 9 months is about something, let's say shorthand is about cooperation, and 3 years for shorthand, let's say it's culture, cooperation and then culture. So the 9-month revolution, which I've been talking about for some time, I think we can see how they're different from apes in just a few little videos. So 2 of these are home videos. Actually, all of them are, but 2 of them are me. My daughter, on her exact 9-month birthday, I decided since it was 9 months, I should have the sibling here with the camera filming what we did at 9 months. And watch what happens at 9 months here. I get very excited because she does something cool at 9 months. Now watch where she's looking, right? She rolls it back to me. And I go, oh my gosh, she rolled it back to me. And now she's going to roll it back. All right. And she's looking at my face. See where she looks? She looks up because she wants the reaction. We're sharing this activity. Okay. And now see, she looks to the face. So this is important because I'm going to show you a chimp in a second. And they don't look to the face like this. They're not really sharing the activity. Second is the famous showing behavior. And it's similar to some pointing things that you'll see in a minute. And I want you to this happens very quickly. So watch the showing. This is about a 14 or 16-month-old baby. That's it. Okay. What's the motivation for that? The motivation for that is just, isn't this cool? He's just sharing it with his dad. Right? He doesn't want the dad to do anything with it. He's just saying, isn't it cool? Now, if you say, well, this is cute, but does this apply to adult humans? Well, yes, it does. This is basically us gossiping with one another, saying, did you see that game last night? Or did you hear who got divorced or something? Gossip is just sharing, just for the sake of sharing information. And this already starts at 9 months of age, and great apes don't do this, and great apes don't collaborate in the same way that you just saw. And here is the famous picture book reading, joint attention. So this is mom, also on the 9-month birthday. You can see the baby's wearing the same clothes. And now watch the baby look. So not only is she following the pointing, but she looks to mom to say, yeah, and then she points. All right. She's pointing also. All right. And so we get very excited about that because, all right, so this is what's happening at 9 months. Collaboration, where we're sharing, communication, where we're inviting someone to share attention with us, and joint attention, where we go back and forth communicating about these extra things. Now, here's an ape. This is a human-raised chimpanzee at about 3 years of age. And I tried to get some toys that were somewhat similar to those. And then you see the ball. All right, now she's trying to engage the chimp with the ball. She's going to grab it. She asks for it. He doesn't give it to her. She doesn't get it. All right. And now she's bouncing it, inviting play. And yes, the chimp is interested in the ball, but she's not interested in sharing it. She's not interested in collaborating or showing or sharing or joint attention. She's playing with it on her own. So you notice no looks to the face of the human. Okay, so she's having fun with the ball. All right, now that was a quick clip. Now we're coming to a little scene with the book. And this is, the chimp's name is Annette, and Annette is very interested in the pictures in the book. She likes the pictures, but she doesn't turn around and reference the human. She's just looking at them on her own. And in just a minute, she's going to pick up the book herself. Right? First of all, she's gonna rake the book because, again, it's just a physical object. And now we'll have a little quick. Now we have a quick new scene. This is when she gets the book herself. And again, she actually likes to poke at the pictures a little bit herself, but she doesn't share them or say, turn around and look or do anything that looks like joint attention. Now she gives you the ball and she plays with the ball on her own. She plays with the other ball on her own. But you notice just a complete different kind of engagement. The triadic engagement, me, you, and the thing we're focused on that you see here in the 9-month-old that you don't see in the ape. Now, adult apes, this is only a 3-year-old here, but adult apes are way more competent than infants. They get their own food, they fight with others, they have sex, they do all kinds of things, but they don't have this sharing dimension. So I think the shared intentionality schema, I think what characterizes it cognitively is what I call the dual level structure. That is, at the same time that we have a joint goal and joint attention, you have your role and your perspective, on the situation, and I have my role and my perspective. We're building a tower together. That's our joint goal. You hold the blocks steady, I put one on top. You're focused on them from this side, I'm focused on them from this side. So this dual level structure, I believe, is is what is unique about the human way of thinking about things from 9 months of age. And what I want to do now is I want to show you a little bit more. Those were just sort of impressionistic videos, and I want to show you some more systematic experiments on these things. Sorry, when I'm sharing the screen, I can't see my clock. I need something to make sure I'm on time here. Okay, collaboration. Here's an experiment by Felix Warneken. He graduated from the other university in Berlin, and you can see them collaborate. Look, see, kind of the little child, 18 months old, kind of teases, but then he puts the block down the right side, and it makes noise. And then part of the experiment is that now Felix is going to stop, and the kid says, over here, come on. His hand is stuck for the moment. He has to pull it out. And you say, come on, do your part, do your part. Okay, so they're coordinating, they're re-engaging to the goal, they're coordinating with respect to a shared goal. So they have the shared goal. For the moment, the adult steps out and stops interacting, and the child communicates by gesturing to get the adult to come back into the game. Chimps don't do this. One of the things, when you're going to see a couple of cases of chimpanzee collaboration in a moment, and one of the things that stands out most when you're comparing to human children is no active communication to coordinate the collaboration, to coordinate the roles. This child is saying, you're not doing your role. Come on, if we're going to play this game, you have to play your role. Chimps don't do that. Here's another one. This was actually a pilot subject, again, Felix, and they were, this was a helping study. So you can see he puts away the magazines. Okay, and now here comes some more. Again, this was a study of helping. Ooh, he's having trouble. And the 18-month-old, now for current purposes, since we're talking about collaboration, I want you to notice not just that the child is helping, that's interesting, but for purposes of collaboration, watch, he's going to tell Felix how to play his role. He's going to say, you put them there. And watch, he actually looks to the face. He points, they go there. Right? So to play your role, you have to put them there. So the child is actually taking the perspective of the adult, knowing what the adult's role is. And I wouldn't call this teaching. I'm going to come to some distinctions in a moment, but showing the adult what to do by pointing where he needs to put the things, put the magazines. Okay, so now, oh gosh, sorry. So now, when he comes to this third round, the 18-month-old is going to anticipate the whole thing and not wait till he has the problem, but actually anticipate what he's going to do in his role. And again, tell him how to play his role. They go there. Okay. All right. And even, troubleshoot a little bit when the door closes, she opens it, and then initiate the closing. This might be my favorite video of all time because it shows, first of all, the child not knowing what's going on at all, seeing what the adult does, understanding it and following into it and helping, and then from that one little interaction, understanding both roles in this interaction and how they relate to one another and helping the other play his role by communicating and coordinating those roles. This is an 18-month-old, barely talking, been walking for a few months and maybe just saying a few words. So this is already completely different from what you would see in apes. Now you are going to see that apes can coordinate in some situations. So here they are. They have to collaborate by they have to both pull on the rope at the same time. The rope is threaded through some hooks. So if you pull by yourself, it just comes through. right? And you're going to see, this was done for a TV thing, so I'll just let you listen to the voiceover.
He realizes he can't do it on his own and removes the peg to release the other chimp.
So this is actually, for the TV, they did 2 experiments in one. So this was the first experiment, really amazing. The chimp knows he needs a partner and goes and opens the door for his partner. I should say her.
They pull both together.
Okay, so this is, you can see they can collaborate. But one reason is because we have solved the problem for them of how to divide up the spoils. Each of them has food on their end of the plank. Now we're going to put the food in the middle and see what happens.
In this situation, the chimpanzees help each other. Will the 2 chimps still help each other as humans would?
So now the food is in the middle. This is the dominant chimp here, closest to us. The other one knows she's subordinate and is not very enthusiastic.
But the dominant chimpanzee grabs all the food.
So now the subordinate chimp just quits on the next trial. Okay, so they can't maintain collaboration, and one reason is because they are evolved to solve problems of competition over resources by dominance, as are a number of species. Now here we get our 2 little 3-year-old German children in Akita. They have 4 Gummibärchen in the middle of this thing here. So you're only going to see the case where they're in the middle. You're not going to see the case where they're separated. And I actually chose this one because one of the little boys acts a little like the first chimp, but then you'll see there's a very different result in the end. All right, so this little boy goes over, but he doesn't take them all. And in fact, he took 2 and then he put them back. And now this little boy says, meaning they're none on my side. So he comes over to the middle and he actually starts to take all of them. And the other little boy says, no. And so then he takes 2 and they each take 2. Okay, and they can do this all day long. As many gummy bears as their parents will let them have, they can do this. So they have a way, they generally divide them equally. These are preschoolers, but they know 2 and 2 is equal. They know this is the same amount, and they know that this is not the same amount, and they almost always divide them equally. If not, if one of them starts to take more, as you saw here, the little boy says, no, and that, and just the saying no is enough to negotiate so that we end up equal nonetheless. Okay, so humans are evolved to collaborate. I think the context for this was collaborative foraging, where they were going for resources and they've had a way of dividing the spoils fairly at the end. Now, as I mentioned, communication is a key part of this. We communicate to coordinate. Chimpanzees, one of my earliest research with chimpanzees was about their gestural communication. Their vocal communication, which a lot of people take as maybe a precursor to language, is not really. The vocal communication is very much hardwired and fixed and has very little flexibility. And so the gestural communication, if you look at this little gesture here, you can see that it's much more deliberate and intentional. We call them intentional gestures, intention movements. And the little probably 3 or 4-year-old and mom go for a walk together. Okay, so they have this flexible gestures, but notice the gestures are always imperative. It's always what I want you to do. So they gesture to get the other guy to play or to come for a walk or to groom or to have sex or whatever it is. The gesture is about what I want you to do. So they're always imperative, and they're not just, oh, look, isn't that interesting? Or declarative or indicative. They're not just that. And they're not triadic. It's about you and me and what I want you to do. It's not you and me sharing attention. So you're going to see that human gestures, human children's early gestures, this is a 16-month-old, have this triadic quality, right? So it's not me telling you what to do, it's me showing you something, me sharing attention to something. And again, she doesn't want the father to do anything. She just wants him to look and share attention. I should say that we have done an experiment, Ulf Laskowski, who's now a professor in Hamburg, the study was that when children pointed for you like this, you could do one of several things and see if they were happy with the outcome. And if you just looked at it, they point and you look, they aren't particularly satisfied. What they want you to do is look at it and go, oh, that's great. Oh, wow. They want you to share your enthusiasm for it. So that's the real goal of the pointing is joint attention is too sort of clinical a word. It's really shared interest, shared enthusiasm about this thing. And here's the showing again, just to emphasize again that this is just to share. That's all it is. These gestures in this modality, triadic gestures, referential to something external for just a declarative purpose, not imperative, are unique to humans. And here you see it in an iconic gesture or pantomime. So this little child is 24 months old. Iconic gestures aren't quite as natural as pointing. Children all over the world point at around the same age quite reliably. Iconic gestures are a little more variable. And what we did here was this little girl knows how to operate this toy, and we have a little plexiglass so she can't actually touch it now. And a puppet is struggling with it and not being able to solve the puzzle. And the child is going to show the puppet how to do it. Okay. Okay. So again, this has that showing quality, but now we're getting in the direction of pedagogy or teaching, right? And this is something I've written about theoretically, that pointing and showing is probably the first manifestation of a pedagogical motive. And in this case, it's simply helping. So helping and teaching and showing are all the same thing for an 18 to 24 month old. I'm showing you how to do it. I'm helping you do it. I'm teaching you how to do it. They probably don't think of teaching as teaching per se, but certainly showing and sharing is a step on the road in that direction. And even in comprehension, people find this hard to believe, but we have probably a half a dozen studies showing that chimps can't even comprehend a declarative pointing gesture. So here's a little 12-month-old, 12 months now. So this is mainly pre-linguistic. And we're going to just look at a very simple case of comprehending declarative pointing. She's going to hide the toy and then point it out to me. So she hides it. He doesn't know where. Now she's going to call his name to get him to look straight at her, and then she's going to. And now you say, well, of course, she showed him where it was. She told him where it was. But I tell you, chimpanzees don't process this. They don't understand this. They don't understand that you're trying to help them find it, that you're trying to show them where it is. They don't understand that cooperative dimension. I say chimpanzees, but no other species does either, except domestic dogs, and that's a different story, but I'm going to leave that aside. So again, Gergely and Chibra, whom you may have heard of in a theory they call natural pedagogy, I've had disputes with them about what came first, pedagogy or this kind of cooperative communication. And my argument is that this is foundational to pedagogy here. This just sharing information and showing things. And then ultimately you get to this kind of thing. These are two little boys who've been taught two different rules about this game. One of them is taught that this block goes on the card with the same color, and one has told this goes on the one with the same animal. So you'll hear them talking about Inta, the duck, and I forget what the other animal is.
Like eagle to eagle.
Yeah, eagle to eagle. Dogs. No, it's a duck. Gate sniff.
Eagle to eagle on eagle to eagle on the is that yes manner. Das geht so.
Geht so. So das geht nicht and geht so. This is normative language. So now once they get to 3 years of age, it's not just doing it, it's the right way to do it. And so they can actually exchange perspectives with respect to the right way to do it. Geht so. All right, that's a shift in their way of thinking, that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And we have various lines of evidence. I review them in my 2019 book on becoming human for this kind of normative thinking that emerges at around 3 years of age. Now, so that's all about collaborating and communicating. It's about coordinating. Now, what about actually transmitting information? Social cultural learning. And so another thing that's unique to humans is teaching. Now, we normally think of, I showed you some things that are on the way to teaching, even in these little toddlers, but obviously the prototypical situation is an adult teaching a child. And I want you to notice a couple of things here. The first thing is that this is Tanya Bene. She also got her degree at the other university in Berlin. And she's going to show this child how to do something, and she's going to show it in an unusual way. We know that if the child has it on her own, she will just do like this with her hand and she'll turn it on. You turn on the light by pressing it down. But Tanya is going to do it with the ball, and then she's going to do it a different way. You can see the child copies the exact way she does it. And now, all right, so she does it, and now she looks to the child. Okay, your turn. All right, that's pedagogy. She wants the child to learn it. So this is showing. She's showing her how to do it, but she is showing with a pedagogical motive. I want you to learn it. And when you learn it, then you're done. Right? And this pedagogy motive, I think, is really important in cultural transmission because it stabilizes things. The adults make sure that children learn things and that they do it a particular way. Now watch this child. She's going to use the ball, which is unusual. She's definitely copying the adult. And then she's going to look to her face like, is this right? Is this the way you do it? See? Is that how you do it? Yes. Okay. And actually Tanya gives her a quick nod. Okay. There we are. That's the way you do it. Okay. Now, just to show, she's going to now do it a different way just to show you how flexible this learning is. The child already has a successful way of doing it. And now she says, watch. She calls her name. Watch. That's the pedagogical cue. Watch. Now she does it with her wrist. And now the child does it with her wrist, even though, again, that's not the normal way she would do it. So this is an 18-month-old baby already responding by doing things in a way that she wouldn't normally do them because pedagogy is telling her that's how to do them. In a study with comparing children and chimps in 2 different studies, we had them basically learn how to do something one way. That's this hole on the left that says they were previously successful. So they learn how to do it by putting a ball into the hole on the left, and they're successful doing it. Now they see 3 individuals putting a ball in the hole on the right. So they have a successful way of doing it. Now they see others doing it a different way. And the chimps, you can see the results from the title of this paper. The title of this paper is Children Conform to the Behavior of Others, Chimpanzees Stick with What They Know. So this is a special case that some people have called strong conformity because I already have a successful way of doing it and I have no reason to switch. And so the chimps don't switch, but children do quite often. They switch about 60% of the time. So they are, these are 3-year-olds. So they actually conform, change the way they do things to conform. And here's, you may have heard of over-imitation. It's a clever term used by Derek Lyons. This adult has told the child, this is a 5-year-old, at a Kita in Leipzig. And she's telling her, we're going to transfer this rice from this big bin over to this bucket. And she says, okay, here's how you transfer the rice over to the bucket. Okay, so she raises her hands over her head, and then she gets the rice and does this. And now this little 5-year-old is going to do it. She gets the little thing and does this, okay? All right, the putting your hands over your head is obviously completely irrelevant and useless. Okay, so we and others had shown conformity in children like this before. What Derek Lyons did was he did something very clever, is after they did this, he asked children about the raising their hands over their head. Was that necessary? And the vast majority of them say, no, it wasn't necessary. And then why did you do it? And he said, well, because that's the way it's done. She showed me how to do it, and that's the way it's done. So pedagogy, there's a famous paper by Liz Bonowitz called The Double-Edged Sword of Pedagogy, that pedagogy can also have the effect of children copying mindlessly even without thinking, you know, if it's a useful thing to do or not. And so pedagogy can also have the consequence of making kids do things in one rigid way and not exploring other ways. So you need both. I know these are two different, very deep philosophies of education, whether the child-led exploratory type mode and the adult to child pedagogy transmission mode. I think you need both of them. And finally, by 3 years old, you're going to get the child being very upset when somebody does it the wrong way, and you're going to see this normative language. The puppet is going to play a game called daxing and announce that he's daxing, and he's going to do it the wrong way, and you're going to see this 3-year-old how upset he gets that she's doing it the wrong way.
Jetzt sagte ich Stötze.
Look at me. I look at me. It's me. It's a
I assume I don't need to translate. And now here comes the teaching. Sorry. Oh gosh. Sorry. And then the teaching comes. It's going to say first you have. He's going to say first you have to take this. You have to take this. Here. Okay, so we get the correcting him doing it wrong and showing him how to do it. And there's this normative language, das geht nicht, das geht gar nicht. So you get the, and in that child you saw in the previous one, geht so. This normative language is a right and a wrong way to do it. So that's 3 years old. Before 3 years old, they can show you how to do things, but there's not a sense of the right and wrong way to do it. Okay, so we actually, my colleague, O Madigan, who is a philosopher, we were invited to write a paper for this Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society in just last year. And it was about, you can see the title over here on the left, The Emergence of Collective Knowledge and Cumulative Culture. And so we wrote a paper called Shared Intentionality Reason Giving in the Evolution of Human Culture, which was meant to be a kind of an update on my cultural learning paper from 30 years ago. What we did was we tried to compare what apes are doing, what chimpanzees do, and what human children do at different ages, and try to reconstruct a kind of an evolution of pedagogy in some sense, all right? And what you have on the y-axis is the degree and the extent of cumulative cultural transmission. That is, that the degree to which a knowledgeable individual can transmit that faithfully and well to a less knowledgeable individual. And let's sort of step through these steps here. Okay, so down here at the bottom, and we actually did this evolutionary thing, so we're calling these Australopithecines, and those would be very early humans who are basically like apes. They're basically another species of ape. And what you have here in all cases of cultural transmission, you have to have the invention in the first place, and then you have to have the transmission. So at the beginning, you have individual innovations or individual inventions, and there's conservative social learning. And by that, I mean what you saw with the apes in those studies, where if they already have a way to do it, they don't change. They stick with what works. Now, that doesn't mean they can't learn an innovation. If it's a new area and they don't already have a successful way of doing it, they might get a hint from another person doing it. And so there might be some transmission. But it's conservative, meaning that it won't lead to innovation if the other individual already has an established way of doing it. All right, so that's sort of ground zero. I think if you really want to map this onto human ontogeny, I think human infants don't imitate very much, and not when they already have a successful way of doing something. So there's really not much going on. These say infants before a year old. Now, a next step with early Homo, so maybe a couple of million years ago or 1 to 2 million years ago, you still have individual innovations, but you now have more flexible social learning. So I think that's the very first move. And you saw that in the experiment where the young children, even though they had a successful way of doing it, they did it a new way if they saw a new interesting way. Now, maybe they're just kind of conforming blindly. Maybe they see the virtues of the new way. Maybe they only switch if they see that the other way is better. But in any case, they're capable of abandoning their previously successful procedure and going to a new one. So I think that's the first step, is a loosening up of that. Now, let's say 400,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis, obviously from the fossils discovered near Heidelberg. And now you still have individual innovations, but you get demonstrative pedagogy. And now that pedagogy may be slightly exaggerating here. This is the kind of thing that I was showing you before, where the child is going like this, or they're pointing to what you need to do. And I think toddlers are capable of this. So they're showing you something. They're showing you how to do it, typically with gestures. They don't have a conventional language yet. Now, toddlers do have some language, but that's a different story. Language has some special characteristics. But in early humans, I think there wouldn't have been a conventional language at this point. They would be demonstrating by physically showing. And again, you still have the flexible social learning there. So they would be able to, individuals would be able to see a new and better way of doing something, even if they had already had a way of doing it successfully on their own. I should say all of the theoretical analyses of pedagogy assume, I shouldn't say all the ones I like, assume that pedagogy cannot get off the ground without good social learners, right? So if the sort of foundation of pedagogy is that I show you something and you learn it, then you have to be capable of learning it, or the showing doesn't work. And then the next step, and this will be early Homo sapiens. So this is the modern humans, but by modern, I mean 150,000 years ago or something. And now for the first time, you get really collaborative innovations where the innovations are not just individuals, but can be collaborative. And you get normative pedagogy and normative conformity. And by that, I mean, it probably does take language. And you have normative pedagogy where that's what becomes important there, is that the solutions are opaque. So the individual can't really invent them on their own. And sometimes they won't even be able to see the virtue of the new way of doing it. So like that little girl who raised her arms, you just do it the way others do it, even if you don't see the use in it, right? So that's normative conformity. I just conform because that's the way it's done. That's the way you do it. You know, gate zo, it goes like this, right? So I think that is one of the things that characterizes the faster cultural transmission and the faster cultural evolution of modern humans, is we have pedagogy normative pedagogy and normative conformity. And then finally, it might even be the first civilizations. So maybe, 10,000 years ago or 8,000 years ago or something like that. You have collaborative innovations again, but now you get what we call, and this is the whole reason we wrote this paper. You can see the title is Shared Intentionality Reason Giving, is that O Madigan and I had written a previous paper on the importance of reason giving in cultural transmission. So now not only do I normatively teach you what to do, so I say here, it goes like this, but I give you a reason for why we do it like this. And again, this almost certainly requires language. We actually have a study with little kids where they give a reason by pointing. They say, why are you doing it like this? Oh, I see. So in theory, you can give reasons non-linguistically, but probably language is critical here. And the reason giving, again, enables you to do things when it's opaque. So I said before, the step before, I just do it the way you did it. I raise my arms because that's the way it's done. But now maybe I'm deciding, well, maybe you don't need to do that. And then I say, oh, but you do need to do it. You do need to raise your arm, because when you raise your arms, it opens the little cup in some way. And you say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. The little cup opens when you raise it. So if I can give you reasons, then that's going to help in the normative pedagogy and normative conformity, but it's also going to give me flexibility. So now, if things don't go, the situation changes in some way, and the way you showed me is not working anymore, I know the reason why it worked previously, and so I can troubleshoot, and I can adapt, and I can accommodate because I know the reason behind it. So actually, this was a main point of our paper, was that everyone has focused on the previous step of normative pedagogy and normative conformity, which is kind of rigid. The rigidity helps because it really helps in the cultural transmission, but the reason giving gives it flexibility. So you not only have powerful transmission, you have powerful cultural transmission that hooks up to the individual's cognitive skills so that they can understand why things work, why this way of doing it is better, and therefore that makes it possible to be more flexible if the situation changes. So just to start wrapping up here, one of the things that is characteristic of modern humans, contemporary humans, like our little 2-year-old here, is that humans develop much more slowly than other apes. So here is the brain development. Now, human brains are roughly 3 times larger than those of other great apes, 3 times larger. But this graph corrects for that and says, how long does it take you to get to your species adult brain size? And what you can see is that at 2 years of age, human children are only at 50% of their human adult brain size, and chimpanzees are already at 90%. At 90% at 2 years of age already. All right, and chimpanzees are basically at their full human brain size at age 4, more or less, and humans don't get there till age 8, more or less. So actually it's adolescence before it's full. You can see here that's about 90% at age 8. So this is almost certainly an adaptation to cultural transmission. Humans have so much to learn to be effective members. If you're born in an Eskimo culture, you have to learn how to build igloos. If you're born in some other kind of hunter-gatherer culture, you have to learn how to build canoes. If you're born into a modern culture, you learn how to read, industrialized culture, you need to learn how to read and write. You have so much that you have to learn that we have to slow things down if they're going to learn it all before they become independent on their own. So if you look at the age at which you can feed yourself, chimpanzees, as soon as they wean, they're on their own. Once they wean at age 3.5 or 4, they no longer get any help from parents. They have to get their food on their own. What age do human children feed themselves? There are actually studies of hunter-gatherer societies where it's age 16 before kids bring in more calories than they consume. So they're not pulling their own weight till they're 16 in a hunter-gatherer culture. And in the modern culture, I don't know about you, but my college-age kids still have the credit card. So they're not feeding themselves even in their 20s. Yes, so this slowing down of ontogeny is clearly an adaptation to the huge amounts of cultural learning that has to go on. And so I have adopted as my more general way of looking at human development. I borrowed the dual inheritance theory from Boyd and Richardson, and they want to point out what a lot of people in behavioral ecology who study non-human species have argued in the past, is that individuals inherit their environments as much as they inherit their genes. Yes, it's a different kind of inheritance, but fish are born into water. They inherit water. They're born into water. Birds are born into a world has nests. Those nests are already in there before they are born, when they're still in their eggs. So they're inheriting their environment by being born into it. And of course, they inherit their genes biologically in the more classic sense of inheritance. And humans inherit a culture. So they inherit. I inherited the English language when I was growing up. I inherited all the stuff around me in American culture. And of course, I inherited the genes of the human species. And so ontogeny is dual inheritance. It's bringing together my biological adaptations of my species with my cultural groups, cultural products that I inherit. I inherit, tools for writing. I inherit clocks. I inherit computers. I inherit all this stuff. And I have a biological capacity for cultural learning and response to pedagogy that enables me to take advantage of these cultural things. Children with autism is an example that people bring up a lot to me. They don't have the biological capacities for taking advantage of culture and engaging in cultural learning in the same way as do typically developing children. So we can see when the biology is not sufficient that you're not going to engage in this dual inheritance in the same way. And of course, if you were born on a desert island, you'd have all the biological capacities, but you wouldn't have a culture. Well, you're not going to develop all these things either. So you need both of them. It's dual inheritance theory. You need your biological adaptations given to the species through evolution, and you need the culture of your cultural group into which you're born that shows you how to do things in a way that keeps you alive and thriving in your local environment. And ontogeny is the confluence of both of those. A good example is language. If you were born on a desert island, you would not invent a language on your own. There'd be nobody to talk to you. Why would you? But of course, we're biologically prepared, not with a Chomskyan universal grammar, I should emphasize, but we're biologically prepared to communicate with others and to conceptualize the world into categories and all these other ways which we're prepared for language. So my biological preparation for communication and the cultural conventional language of my culture, I inherit both of those, and my task in ontogeny is to put them together by learning the language. So to conclude, human children are adapted for cooperation and culture in ways that other great apes are not, and these adaptations for cooperation and culture are fundamental to the ways that humans communicate, learn from one another, and teach one another. Thank you very much.